Okay, so this video is how to make Ek9 replica speedos. So obviously the price of Ek9 speedos now online is anywhere between 650 and £1,000, and obviously that's just too much really, considering most of these builds are on EJ9s and things like that, which are worth that sort of money anyway. So you can purchase these face plates off of eBay and Alibaba and all that sort of thing. Obviously, firstly, you need to strip down the speedo. You then use a fork and a knife to pop the needles off. It's quite easy. And then you want to unscrew the face plate. Once you unscrewed the face plate, you can offer it up over the top of the original one to mark where you need to drill your holes. Now, I was working from home, so I didn't have a drill with me. So I literally just used a screw and just bored a hole in it for the bits. Quite a simple process, and the reason they don't come with holes is the spacing is different between different models, so that's why you have to drill your own. But again, it's really easy to do. So then once you've got your holes drilled, obviously you can just offer it up back on to check that the alignment's okay. And then you need to take the needle stopper off of the old one. So just use a pair of pliers to squeeze in the back of it and then pop it off, and then literally just push it into your new faceplate. If it's wobbly, because obviously it will damage it slightly when you're taking it out, you can just use a little bit of super glue on the back of it just to hold them in tight, which is what I did. Obviously, reassembly is just the opposite of taking it apart. Just offer it up, put the screws back in. Obviously, be careful when you're doing this and try not to do it with greasy fingers or anything like that, because you'll leave marks on the faceplate. So when you're putting the needles back in, it's quite simple again, but I'm going to do a separate video on how to calibrate the needles, just because it is a bit of a process. But it really is as simple as pushing them back in and sort of playing with the position and popping them in and out until they sit correctly. So obviously now I'm just cracking on with the rest of them, again using the knife and the fork to pop the needles off, and then I'll show you how to paint them afterwards. The speedo hole, it already has holes in it on the faceplate because they're the same on all models. It's just on the rev counter and then the fuel gauge. So then moving on to the speedo needles. Again, I was doing this from home, so I was just sort of working with what I had. I just masked them off, put them in some card, and then just used yellow nail varnish just to make them into reps. If I'd used some spray, they would have come out a bit better, but this was cheap and it was available. I just went down the shop, £4, and it was done, rather than having to wait to get this project done, because I just wanted to do it there and then. So again, with reinserting the needles, it's really simple. Calibrating the fuel gauge and the temp gauge ones is really easy. It's just the rev counter and the speedo one which is a bit tricky, which, like I said, I'll cover in another video. But there are videos out there of how to calibrate your speedo and your rev counter needle, so it's not a massive problem. Now obviously the next step is to give the carbon fibre effect to the bit which surrounds the dials. Now you've got a couple of options. You can either hydro dip it, which is how the genuine ones are done, or you can just wrap it, with carbon fibre effect 3M wrap. The 3M wrap is the easier route to go. I decided to go down the hydro dipping route just because I think it looks better and it's a bit more durable. So obviously that's how it looks now. You could just reassemble it at this point and stick it in the car and then calibrate your needles and be on your way. But if you want to go the full distance to make it a proper rep, the next step is what you need to do to give that carbon effect. But that's how it looks. So now we're at step 2. So you need to cut out your hydro film to the correct size, put tape on it first and then cut it out, so then it keeps its shape. And also when you put it in the water, the tape on it will help it keep its shape. And then also what you need to do is you need to put a base coat on the piece that you're dipping. So even though the plastic is already black, you need to spray it again. So etch it up and spray it so the hydro dip will stick to it, because if you just use the plastic, it will just run off. I used quite a small tub for this dipping and it didn't really work out that well for me. So use a water tub bigger than your piece and make sure the hydro film that you've cut out is a good 3 or 4 inches bigger than your piece as well, to make it a little bit easier. And obviously make sure to take off them clear bits off the back so they don't get covered in it. So just hot water in a plastic tub outside, just from the tap. You lay the film down onto it, so sticky side down. When you test it, you just lick your fingers and put your fingers on it. Whatever side is the sticky side, that goes down into the water. You then spray the activator onto it and wait 30 seconds to a minute. I always get too excited and just do it too quickly, which is why I have problems. So just stay calm and chilled with it. I was rushing a little bit. So laid it down, make sure there's no air bubbles, make sure no water gets on top either. Trying to finger out some bubbles there. And that's where I think I got a little bit of water on top of it, which sort of messed it up a little bit. Spray the activator, you can see it immediately change and it goes very liquidy. I probably went a little bit heavy with the activator as well. I should have been doing it from further back. And then obviously you want to dip it. You want to dip it nice and slow and at an angle. And then when it's under the water, you want to shake it. Get the film out of the way on the surface of the water, take it out. And then from there, you want to head to a warm tap to run it under the tap to get all the sliminess off and any little bits of film which are sat on top of it as well. Obviously make sure you're doing this outside and you wear a mask as well, because it is horrible stuff, the activator. So then just run it under a hot tap, get all the sliminess off. You'll be able to tell when it's off, it's quite clear. So you can pad it dry with a towel, or you can just let it dry naturally. You're meant to clear coat as well after you've hydro dipped. I didn't, because obviously this is never going to be touched, it's never going to be handled, and I wanted to keep that sort of satin effect. I didn't want it to be high gloss. So then that's how it looks after. So I had a few blemishes on mine, probably because I just rushed it a little bit. You can see there's an area where it didn't stick very well, but you get the idea. This is only my second time hydro dipping, so I'm not amazing at it yet, but it's definitely something you can do at home and you can achieve a high quality finish with it. So this is showing just a standard Ek9 speedo, pretty boring. And then this is the replica one fitted. So yeah, it's not a bang on replica. You know, if you had them side by side, I will get some photos. Maybe when I do the calibration video, I'll have them side by side. But it's a pretty damn good piece. And I think most people wouldn't realise. And I just think it's worth it. You know, I probably got this, the fascias were about 50, 60 quid, £4 in nail varnish, and then 20, 30 quid in hydro dipping stuff. And I've got meters more of that hydro dipping stuff that I can use on other things. So yeah, well worth it in my opinion.